to Arise Prime Time, where we offer perspectives on the news and talking points of the day. I'm Charles Aniekolo. So, will there be an inspiring return for the People's Democratic Party after 16 years at the top of its game and the crash that followed? Will there be an incredible tale of determination and triumph after the setback? Will there be a comeback, a way to recover the glory that it can apply to the waste heaps of what for now looks like a barren future? As reserves of faith in the PDP run out, the chieftains of the party say they're working even harder to hold on to its crown as the once celebrated longest ruling political party in the history of this country. But now there's the APC. Amazing, really, that the APC was like a rib taken from inside the PDP, but its greatest aim was to bring a speedy and decisive end to the rule of the PDP, and now, if possible, prevent it from ever rising again. So can it succeed in knocking the PDP off its leadership perch permanently as 2027 draws near? Well, for more on this, I'm joined now in the studio by a leading opposition PDP member of the National Assembly, Senator Henry Seriaki-Dickson, CON, who governed Bayelsa State for 8 years. We'll be talking about the crisis in the PDP, the state of the opposition, and the withering insecurity that is currently besmirching Nigeria. Thank you very much indeed for coming in.
Thank you, Charles, for having me.
Thank you for turning up this time.
Thank you very much for acceding to my request to postpone our earlier interview on account of the dastardly killings in Benue.
Well, the reason you gave made a lot of sense.
Thank you very much.
And as we mentioned just now, you postponed your interview on this program, which had been scheduled for earlier this week, Monday, in fact, as a mark of respect for the victims of the attacks in Benue State.
Yes, I did.
In that regard, I wonder what you think of President Tinubu traveling to the state on Wednesday.
Well, first of all, let me use this opportunity to condole once again with the government and people of Benue State and with all the families affected, and families and friends, and indeed with all Nigerians, because what has been going on in Benue, Plateau, and so on in some other places is actually a collective assault. It's an assault on our collective psyche as Nigerians and as human beings even. So talking about that, the president went there, which is good. But I think he could have gone there much earlier. But anyway, he went there. But I don't think that we had a very the decisions and declarations that were made may not have been as forceful as some would have wanted. For example, the way some of us look at this what has been going on, it's not an issue of reconciliation. It's an issue of pure criminality that is almost at a genocidal level. So it's when people talk about settlement, there could be minor elements of that, but you can't equate killing a cow with slaughtering hundreds of human beings. I think that's the point the Tortip kept making. There's one picture that is very poignant. I don't know if you have seen it. The picture of the lady who was in the hospital with her child, whose arm had been severed, and who looked away, in protest about the actions of government. It's good that officials of the government went. I mean, the security chiefs were there. I spoke with the governor myself, and I know that a lot of security people were there and things are happening. But are they far-reaching enough, Charles?
And are they after the fact?
They are clearly after the fact. Look, I mean, we're not talking of preventing. I mean, we are not talking of 200. Next time you will hear will be 300.
Right. So your sense is that the frequency of these attacks is up without a commensurate response by the government.
Yeah, I think the government is actually without a solution as it is now. And I'm not talking of this government alone. The Nigerian state appears unprepared for the sort of violence that people are unleashing on fellow Nigerians. You just said the Chief of Defense Staff tell you that he thinks that there are foreign elements coming in. And these are not just criminals like that. These are mercenaries. These are actually commando units of foreign armies trained elsewhere and so on, well equipped, well armed, well prepared tactically. Sometimes even more so than our. And our system is completely unprepared for that.
But you do know that politicians are sometimes blamed for creating the environment for these types of things to take place.
I don't think what is going on, the systematic killings and displacement of people, indigenous people, that has been going on in Benue, in Plateau, parts of southern Kaduna, and so on and so on, where the Chief of Defense Staff comes from, southern Kaduna, which I think is a bit in southern Kaduna. But the way it is going on in Benue, for now, is beyond farmer-herder clashes. And so, these guys are well-armed commando units coming to wipe out communities.
Well, in that regard, I mean, I wonder how much empathy you have for the Nigerian army, which is clearly overstretched, and with the solutions that are being proffered by the Chief of Defense Staff. He was saying that, he was sitting where you were just a minute ago. He says foreign fighter infiltration is due largely to the fact that Nigeria doesn't have proper borders.
I think that is a very valid point.
What I'm wondering is that if that is something you agree with, would you vote for such a measure if it came to the National Assembly?
No. I support. This is the Chief of Defense Staff making an opinion. That's a very considered. This is the topmost, the number one soldier in the country. And looking at it, if you look at everybody knows that our borders are porous, and we are surrounded by francophone brothers all over, and with the crisis in the Sahel, as he rightly said, and also even the confusion in the former ECOWAS and so on, we're actually at the receiving end of a lot of things that have an international dimension. Look at the situation in the Lake Chad region, the effect of climate change, and so on and so forth, where, the Lake Chad is drying up, or sources of they are fast depleting sources of water, and even of large pasture.
Right.
So everybody is coming down.
Right.
And then the crisis and the state failures that we're seeing around the Sahel makes Nigeria a very attractive place for mercenaries to come to. So I agree completely with the Chief of Defense Staff. Our borders, we need to rethink the state of security of our borders. And if there is suggested that we secure our borders by fencing or by whatever way, I think that we should support it. I will support it.
You made a very important point, which is that it doesn't matter what else you're doing, you have to be alive.
You have to be alive.
You've got to kind of, secure your borders. But, you talked about the woman with the child in the hospital.
Yeah, that's the picture.
That's the shot.
That's the picture.
That's a very powerful image, isn't it?
And that picture tells the story of how the common people in Benue State, the victims of this massacre, this genocide, how they feel about it. The woman has complete lack of hope, lack of trust, lack of confidence, and that picture typifies defiance. And standing before her, you can see the official, she doesn't care.
It also shows incredible frustration.
Of course.
That you have basically let me down.
Yes, they have a right to feel so.
Yeah.
And you see, it's a combination of a lot of factors. The CDS talked about fencing of the borders. We've got to look at them. How we will secure our borders. And our security and defense chiefs are there to work out the details. We hope that Mr. President will give accelerated attention to that. And then he will look for the money. And if a proposal like that finds its way to the National Assembly, as a member of the Senate Committee on Defense, as a member of the Senate Committee on National Security and Intelligence, I will waste no time in supporting it and canvassing support for it, as we have always done.
Well,
but it's beyond fencing. The president has got to, as leader of the country, convene urgent meetings with the governors. I've kept talking about this need for ranching as a national security policy and also as a food security strategy as well for the country. He established the Ministry of Livestock, which, by the way, should have been livestock and aquaculture, because you can't deal with livestock and then leave out.
And of course, aquaculture
fisheries.
involves your people,
Oh,
doesn't it?
of course.
The Niger Delta.
Of course. So it should have been that. Anyway, but where is the strategy? The CDS has said that instructions were given for ranching in Benue. It's got to be a national problem. As we are talking, there are clashes sometimes going on in even down as far as Enugu.
No, but you know that the issue has been controversial, so I can understand the point they're making.
Yes.
Let them start in one place and show how this can work and work efficiently, and then kind of expand from there.
No, I don't think properly explained and properly developed as a national security and food security strategy, that there's no governor that will oppose it. We implemented ranching in Bayelsa when I was governor, at the height of these farmer-header clashes. And we directed the headers to go to a particular place owned by the state. In fact, my successor made that a law.
That worked.
Oh, of course, because they're supposed to be there. But you see, when I was there, because of the recession we're managing, we didn't have the resources to build the fences, to build all the facilities that we wanted to build, so that everybody who came in with a cattle will be there and pay tax. And the herders were happy, because they used to pay taxes called jangali in the north. They are willing to do so. So it's not enough to do it only in Benue. What of cows that are straying into Bayelsa, to rivers, to Enugu, and to all other parts of the state? We should have a national policy banning open grazing, but doing so in such a manner that we will engage the herders and then build these ranches for them. Then we stop it.
Well,
you have to provide the ranches,
right?
Otherwise,
isn't that a law that the National Assembly can make?
Well, unless you couch it as a national security issue, the National Assembly, our power to legislate, may not cover ranching as such.
Right.
Because agriculture may not be in the exclusive.
So would it be more of an executive order?
And that's why the president, as leader of the country, has to engage the state governors.
Right.
Who, by our laws, have the land, by the Land Use Act. And they will know how to provide the land. And then the CBN, in my view, and the Ministry of Finance can be made to provide money. If it is 3 billion, 5 billion, 10 billion, whatever the cost comes to, and make it available so that you have these ranches built all over. And with time, the private sector will buy in. And sometimes even local government councils can build in a place like Benue that is very good for grazing. That can be a veritable business if you build 4, 5, 6 ranches with the support, with the consent of the people, the government, and the people. So that anybody who wants to do any business of livestock, you take your cattle there. They are registered. You are protected. You build a school there. For this, because you see, as I said on the floor of the Senate one day, when this issue came up, I said, look, those cattle headers who are taking cattle from Niger Republic, from Chad, up to Sokoto, Kebbi, Zamfara, and then taking them to Bayelsa and Rivers and Lagos, actually, they are victims of the Nigerian state as well. Young children who don't go to school, no access to formal education, whether English or Islamic or Arabic. And all this education is valuable education. So if you build these ranches, you build the schools there for them. You build the schools for them. And you create a way by which cattle is transported. How can cattle be competing with us, even in FCT, for space? There are times we move around. I'm not talking of Benue now. I'm talking, Charles, of the Federal Capital Territory here in Abuja. And I don't know how the Minister of the FCT is dealing with that. Because that's a major problem.
Well, he's a member of your party. Or you're not quite sure which party he belongs to.
Because that has to be dealt with. What I mean is, even in the FCT, we're not spared. So we can't be competing for space with cattle.
Yeah.
And however valuable they are, there can be no moral equivalency between killing a cow and then somebody now coming to revenge to wipe out a community.
Yeah, that's a good point.
There's no equivalency.
But
that is genocide and should be dealt with and called by its name.
Absolutely. Yes. We mentioned the fact of the political parties, so let's kind of segue into the other topic.
So let me round up with the security suggestion.
Yeah, briefly, because we're running out of time. Before you say to me that I've taken up all I didn't give you enough.
So the CDS talked about fencing of our borders.
Right.
I think that's an issue. The president should convene a meeting with his governors and the security people and work out a template and create the finances for implementation of national compulsory grazing, compulsory ranching, okay? And therefore, thereafter, a ban will follow, okay? Then, our local systems are weak. Principally, the local government administration system in the country. It has collapsed. It doesn't exist, okay? The president, through his attorney general, approached the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court made a pronouncement. They have to follow it through, so that we can have governance at that lower level, where most of these things are going on. And then, fourthly, there has to be more presence and governance, real governance, by state government officials, by local government officials, in terms of dealing with communities and knowing what is going on, and relating and managing security with the DPOs and the security officers in the various local government areas and so on and so forth. And then funding and training of the police.
Right.
The CDS talked about that. No nation can be secure unless you've trained and fund the police.
Absolutely. That's key.
That is key.
The question is not the theory is a completely different thing. The issue, which I think is what you're emphasizing, is that action has to be taken.
Action has to be taken.
And it's got to be taken now.
Yeah, and we all need to work together.
Yeah.
We don't need to politicize it. We don't need to make it a partisan thing.
Absolutely.
And which was what the APC did all these years. When Boko Haram started, they made it a PDP thing. The President Jonathan said,
right.
You know?
Well,
played politics with insecurity, with the economy and so on.
Well, let's move on because we're running out of time very quickly. We're talking. One of the things we're going to talk about is the crisis in your party, the PDP.
Yes.
At least there was some rare good news for the PDP on the defection front, with the former Vice President Namadi Sambo denying that he's defected to the APC. I mean, that would have been a real disaster, wouldn't it, if he had in fact
Oh yeah, Namadi Sambo remains a very well-respected Nigerian leader, not just a leader of the PDP. I was personally very relieved. I tried to get across, and people around him told me, dismissed it, and I was very happy. And it's a good thing to know that he has publicly put that to rest.
Yeah, but he's just one person, although he's a very influential person.
Yeah.
But, I mean, people look at what is happening in the PDP and they wonder what on earth is going on to this party. I mean, you've been chairman of the PDP Governors Forum. You were the chairman of the previous Reconciliation Committee.
Yes.
And obviously you didn't quite reconcile them, did you?
No, we did. We did. I was chairman of the Reconciliation Committee, appointed by 5 different chairmen. Appointed 5 times. Okay? And we worked together. I didn't do it alone. We had a formidable committee. And then when we suddenly lost the 2015 election, suddenly because we thought we were going to win. And then for the first time, a ruling party lost power to the opposition. So,
you've never recovered.
It was a shock,
that, have you?
great shock.
Yeah.
But we managed, those of us who were governors. Remember, when you have a president, that is the rallying point of the party. But we suddenly lost that. But I want to commend not just the members of the committee, but the resilience of the governors and the members of the National Assembly and all party leaders across the country. With that shock, we recovered. And when my committee went out, reached out to people, other leaders supported, and we managed to put our acts together. And if you ask me, the next election, which was 2019, Charles, we have the figures. We won that election. The second term of Buhari, we won the election. I was deeply involved in it. So we by by our resilience and commitment to the party. In spite of intimidation, in spite of everything, all of us who were governors at that time, nobody gave in to any intimidation. We all, as Trump said, stood by and stood fast. You know, we stuck to our party.
And now?
And now, it's very distressing, really, I must tell you. I mean, last week, a friend of mine, a Ghanaian parliamentarian, who is my friend, visited me in Bayelsa, and used to hear how they called me in Bayelsa, the Great White Shark of Furuma Pepe. And they called me, and I was embarrassed.
That's your
it.
That's your walking stick.
Yes, and they called me, Furuma Pepe, what is going on in your country, in Nigeria? Are you now all going to the party, to the ruling party? Is Nigeria becoming a one-party state? That's a Ghanaian. And I found it difficult to answer him. So, you see, I want to make a plea to PDP leaders and leaders of opposition party. We can't allow Nigeria to slip into a one-party rule. One-party rule is tantamount to dictatorship. We can't allow that in this country. And it's a good thing that the president, in his speech, which I reacted.
Democracy Day.
Yes, which I reacted to. On one bit. On the bit that dealt with Rivers, because I feel strongly about it as a Democrat. But it was a well-written speech, well delivered. And the president said clearly that it's not working to achieve a one-party state. And through the challenge to the leaders of the opposition, which is the right.
That he's not working to achieve it, but that you guys are doing it for him.
Well that's what it means, because it's a call for the opposition members to put our house or our houses together.
Yeah, but it's not
because
working.
Really, no, but we're working at it.
The reason I say
really,
that
we're working at
a lot of people are saying that any hope for the PDP, based on what people are seeing, the attritional levels of what is going on, that any hope for the PDP for victory in 2027, it would have to go into alliance with that national opposition coalition. What do you think? Is the PDP too badly rent asunder to be attractive even to any political coalition?
Well, look, the PDP is not beyond redemption. Does it have issues? Yes. Every political party, including the APC.
Yeah, but these are fundamental issues.
No, it has.
And as you said, the APC has a rallying point.
Yes.
The president, you don't have that rallying.
They have that. But you see, the bigger the head, also the bigger the headache as they move along. The PDP's challenge, and which is what we are telling our governors, who are the general officers commanding, when we don't have a president. And Charles, let me tell you, if the APC had lost the last election, remember they got only 30% of the presidential vote.
Well, nearly 40%.
Nearly 40%.
Yeah.
So, in other words, what it means is that the APC-led federal government is indeed, in fact and in truth, a minority government. Okay? Don't lose sight of that. So we can see how they are happy to woo and welcome the other members of the party. But you see, the PDP's challenges are minor. If party leaders will be honest, patriotic, governors put themselves together in a room, eyeball to eyeball, and tell themselves the truth. If the working committee will sit down together, look at themselves, and decide whether this party should die in their hands or not, whether they should have the inglorious record of destroying this party in their tenure. If they do so, the problems are minor. Take, for example,
well, I'm afraid I'm not going to have time for that. We're literally out of time. So you've got 15 seconds to summarize. I apologize.
Okay. Well, what I think they should do, the PDP leaders should do, and we are in a small committee reaching out to them, is that, look, make the concessions that must be made. The National Secretary that INEC says they have recognized, get him to sign. Get him to sign and convene a proper NEC with the chairman. Go to the NEC, take the decisions. Already we have appointed the convention committee and the zoning committee. We ratify those, and then we go to the convention. At the convention, a new leadership will emerge, and then you see a new PDP. And lastly, let me tell you, Yes, governors are very influential. We don't want governors to decamp, and it's sad they are doing so. But I assure you, the most important question is, are the people decamping?
Right, okay.
Yes.
On that note,
Yes.
I shall leave that hanging,
Yes.
and I'll leave that as a rhetorical question.
Yes.
Senator Henry Seriaki-Dickson, CON, former governor of Bayelsa State and a leading opposition PDP member of the National Assembly, thank you very much indeed. Good to see you again.
Thank you, Charles.
That's it for this edition of Arise Prime Time. Join us again tomorrow. From me and the entire team here in Abuja, bye-bye, and thank you for watching.